gentlemen, welcome in, guys. Sergeant Moose here, back with another The First Descendant Build video, and today, guys, we're going to be focusing on my favorite Descendant, Valby. For those of you that don't know, Valby has been my favorite Descendant from the beginning of the game. Of course, she had a little bit of a rocky start, a little bit of a tough go. You know, a lot of folks were using her specifically for the Valby run back in the day, and then putting her on the bench, and, you know, not much more from her. But now, she's gotten the buffs that she deserves. You know, people are absolutely deleting the newest boss, the Defiler, with her. You know, they're running through other bosses as well, and she's become a force to be reckoned with. But my focus with her in today's video is talking about the purges, and not only the level 20 purge, but of course, as you guys know, in 3 days we have 21 through 30 coming up, and I kind of wanted to make a versatile character that I can go ahead and take into these new purges as well, kind of mix and match and change things out for her as needed based on the enemy's weaknesses. And being that she's non-attribute, I think this is really going to come in handy for her down the road. So, without further ado, guys, we're going to jump in, talk about the build a little bit. We're going to talk about the Descendant Modules first. Now, this is a gun-based build more than skills. Yes, we're going to be using skills as well, but it's going to be based around the Thundercage, and we'll talk about another weapon here too. But let's get into the modules here a little bit. So, the big one, guys, Supply Moisture. Now, this is one that's been kind of, whenever the game first came out, a lot of people were using this module. However, since that module, you know, people have switched it up to the likes of, you know, Hydro Pressure Bomb and different things like that. But for this particular activity, we're going to be running Supply Moisture. And why? Well, it says, while on water, increases firearm critical hit rate. Keep in mind for that. Skill critical hit rate, also keep that in mind. Skill duration and firearm attribute trigger rate. All very good buffs that come from this mod. So, as most of you guys know, if you've seen my recent videos, we've been focusing a lot on Haley gun builds within these activities, and I've been looking for other Descendants too that can also get buffs to their weapons, and Supply Moisture here with Valby is a really, really good one, and it will absolutely blow through level 20. So, we're going to focus on non-attribute here, guys, because to proc this Supply Moisture, of course, we're going to be using our ability, the Bubble Bullet here. We're going to be using this for the entire duration of the match. Now, not only are we going to be using this so we have water to stand on to proc our Supply Moisture, but also this is going to be damaging enemies as well. I mean, if you're going to keep throwing out water all over the place to stand on, you might as well have an area of effect and dot damage to be able to damage these enemies while you're shooting them, which is going to make your job easier. So we're going to focus on non-attribute here, also focus on fusion. That's our Bubble Bullet. Shot focus is a big one here coming in for this build, guys, because this is a Descendant mod that affects our firearm attack. As you guys can see here, we're not overly focused on the skill power, so we can you know, stand to lose a little bit of that, but this is going to buff up our Thundercage even more. Coming into skill duration, guys, of course, this kind of speaks for itself. This is going to keep the water on the ground longer, so we don't have to use as much of our ability. Nimble Fingers coming in for the skill cooldown. That way we can spam that ability as much as possible. We also have MP Conversion for more skill cooldown. This is going to reduce our max MP, but there's so many enemies on the battlefield, guys, that you're not going to have to worry about MP. Anyway, and plus we also have components that we'll talk about too. But max HP, of course, we're kind of going a little tanky on this Valby because, again, we want her to be able to stay alive in these activities as well. We have skill expansion with more range for that Bubble Bullet because we want it to be damaging enemies, like I said, as much as we're damaging enemies with our guns. Coming over here, guys, I put on increased defense just to get that defense buffed up, and HP Collector. HP Collector, I believe, for this build is huge because, again, with the water on the ground, you're constantly killing them little trash mobs in the water, and you're getting HP back, you know, in tandem with being able to do that. So that is the Descendant Modules for this Valby build. All right, guys, so coming over to the weapon, which kind of ties all of this together. Now, we have tried a few weapons with this build. However, the Thundercage, because it slaps so quickly and because of its unique ability, I felt like this was the best weapon for this build. However, I've been messing with the Excava with this too, just to kind of test it out, and I've gotten great results with this weapon too. So if you don't have a built Thundercage or a Thundercage yet, but you have an Excava, go ahead, you can try the Excava too. But this one we're going to focus on the Thundercage. Let's take a look at it, guys. So we have fire rate up for the Thundercage. Obviously, it speaks for itself. More fire rate, faster shots, more bullets going into enemies faster. We have better concentration for firearm crit damage. Of course, we're using supply moisture for crit rate here. So with that crit rate, we want to, complement that with crit damage as well. Here we have reload insight. We went with this one so we could get that reload time modifier. We are losing a little bit of reload time on this, but we're gaining 3% crit rate. The idea is to get as much crit rate as possible with this Thundercage, so we went with reload insight. We also have weak point insight. This gives us 20% weak point damage plus another 1.5% critical hit rate. This is kind of a flex area. You can probably swap this one out if you'd like. You could throw something else in here better suitable for you, but that's what we're running for this build, and it seems to be working well. We have edging shot, critical hit rate, again, 43%, firearm attack. Now that's going to reduce it down to 15, but that's big crit rate coming in there. Here's a flat firearm attack, rifling reinforcement. We have better insight here coming in, guys. Firearm critical hit rate, another 39%. Action and reaction, again, the duo, rifling reinforcement, action and reaction. Firearm attack, recoil plus 20. Concentration priority, again, more crit damage to complement that crit rate. An electric enhancement gun. And before we talk about it any further, we're going to go into the firearm's unique ability, which kind of ties all this together too. When defeating an enemy, the defeated enemy has a set chance to discharge electric shockwave, which deals additional damage to nearby enemies. So, again, sort of like the Vulture, not exactly like the Vulture, but this does have potential for chain damage. Whenever you're defeating enemies, it's also going to blow up other enemies in the radius as well. It has a 5-meter radius, and it is 100% trigger rate, so it's always going to be blowing them up whenever you're killing them. So, obviously, a really solid unique ability, and I think this unique ability alone is what makes me want to use this gun on this particular Valby build. Now coming over to the weapon cores and substats, guys, pretty self-explanatory for the for the cores. We have an electric attack. As you can see, it's not gold, guys. I have been farming like crazy trying to get these weapon cores, and I think I went through like 30 and still could not get a yellow electric attack. But the 83% purple is doing for now, but as you can see, once we get the yellow, it's only going to make this build even stronger. So we have that going. We have firearm attack. We have firearm crit rate. Again, trying to get that crit rate high. Rounds per mag, so we get more shots in before having to reload. And, for the last one, we just want sprint speed. Coming down to the substats, we have electric attack. Again, firearm crit rate. We'd like to get that up to yellow if we could. We'll work on that. And we have firearm crit damage and flat firearm attack. So as you can see, guys, the Thundercage, again, it already comes stock with a good crit rate. So it's really good to build this weapon into crit. So that's what we're doing. We want all crit there. Now, coming over to Reactor, guys. Unlike Haley, Valby's Reactor substats do really kind of matter here. We went ahead and we implanted that for submachine gun. Non-attribute fusion, of course. And here we went fusion skill power boost ratio because, again, our skill that we're going to be using isn't really just like a stat stick skill, but it's actually a skill that we want to do damage to the enemies as well. So we want fusion skill power boost ratio here and skill cooldown. Now, you could swap these out. I mean, you could go non-attribute, skill boost power ratio, things like that, but I would recommend at least trying to get one of these power boost ratios and a skill cooldown coming in as well. Now, again, guys, coming over to components, now they do matter, but they don't matter a whole lot. As long as you have a bunch of defense, a bunch of HP, we're looking for MP recovery in and out of combat as well, and any MP modifiers that you can get on your components. But main thing is defense, max HP. Now, I wanted to try to get the 2-piece Annihilation set here at least. You don't absolutely need this, but I went for it just for the increased skill duration for our bubble bullet. But we have a basic defense, max HP, MP recovery out of combat going on here. We have MP recovery in combat on the sensor, plus a ton of defense. For the memory, we have 2 defensive rolls, and for the Slayer, we have, it's a typical processor. You're not going to get anything too great out of it, but we got max HP here. So taking a look at this, she's pretty beefy, guys. We got 9,300 health, 46k defense. You know, a lot of people like to go with about 50 here on defense and about 10 on health, but I mean, we're pretty damn close. And if you're being, you know, somewhat careful in these high-level activities, you're going to stay alive. I mean, don't get me wrong, you do have to move around a little bit. You don't want to just kind of stand stationary the entire time. But the cool thing I like to talk about with this build, guys, as opposed to the build I use for Haley, both of them are very, very similar. However, the thing with Valby is, within her ability, she doesn't have to slow down or anything like Haley. She can move. You can move around with Valby. You can move around quickly. You can roll. You can use your grapple. It's not going to affect your ability. This is what I kind of like a little bit better about her build than Haley's. Like I said, very similar. Haley's skill does grant her a much bigger buff to her weapons, but Valby's is still really good as well. So, with that said, guys, we're going to take a look at our critical hit rate here for the Thundercage. Of course, we're getting a big critical damage multiplier too. The critical hit rate as it sits is 44.68, which honestly isn't too bad. But we're going to throw out our bubble bullet here, and of course you can see we're getting these ticks here on the enemies, and while we're standing in it, that's going to bump up our critical hit rate to 89.36%. So basically almost 90% crit rate, guys, and that is about really all you need. We can still get that a little bit higher too with our substats, but I mean, that is extremely high. Almost every single shot is going to be hitting for a critical. So basically, just to be able to use this build, it's very, very simple. You're just going to run around. You're going to run around the map. You're going to shoot some bubbles out at enemies. As you can see, we get this cooldown back really, really quickly. Shoot these bubbles out at enemies, and always make sure you're standing on water. That's basically all you have to do with this build, guys. Throw out bubbles, stand on water, and you're going to blow through this level 20 activity. And like I said, we plan on moving this build up the ranks to 21 through 30, because being that she's non-attribute, I feel like she's going to be very solid in these endgame activities. And by the way, we got to get this reactor to level 5 for even more skill power. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Coming down to Inversion Reinforcement, guys. Again, you can kind of mix and match how you want to go here. If you want to go, you know, attribute resistance, if you want to go more defense, more HP, you can do whatever you want. But just make sure you have electric focus rounds checked, or whatever activity you're using her for. Make sure you have the corresponding attribute checked, so you can deal extra damage to those enemies. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, that is our Valby build. Honestly, out of all of my Purge builds that I've made, we've spent a lot of time on her as well. This is probably the one I'm most proud of, because, you know, I was a little worried how well Valby would do here in the Purge activities. Now, you could probably do a skill build with her too that we might try out. I think we might try out some skill builds, but again, because she's non-attribute, she doesn't have any like super effective damage to any of these enemy types. So that's why we went with the Supply Moisture with the Thundercage, and we can change this Thundercage on the fly. We can swap out, you know, Electric Enhancement for, you know, a chill mod or a toxic mod, something like that, to take her in the other activities. And of course, as these 21 through 30 activities come out, we'll be sharing that here on the channel as well. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys enjoyed this video, if you guys enjoyed the Valby build, please feel free to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and also if you enjoy the content here on the channel, feel free to support me as your creator, guys. I would really appreciate that, and I really appreciate you guys coming and hanging out. The code is on the screen, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Take care, guys.